Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian. I am a master's student in stem cell biology, a student researcher in the regulatory science research team under Dr. Church, and most importantly, I am a caffeine junkie. Today, my presentation will be the energy drink regulation and perception among adolescents in the United States, a survey about university beliefs about caffeine consumption. So, we've all seen energy drinks, but what do we really define them as? Well, the CDC has this definition that states that energy drinks are beverages that typically contain large amounts of caffeine, added sugars, and other additives and legal stimulants, such as guarana, taurine, and L-carnitine. And I want to stress the importance that a lot of these products are actually promoted in terms of increasing energy and enhancing mental alertness and physical performance. That being said, there are a couple of problems with caffeine, right? Number one, caffeine is classified as a stimulant drug. I see some coffees out here, so congratulations, everyone. You've consumed some sort of drug today. But they have less stringent regulations in the FDA. It's so popularized. We have, Starbucks, we have plenty of coffee options and many different alternatives. It's definitely out there right now in the market. But caffeine does come with health complications. Cardiovascular, neurological, even obesity and diabetes can all be factors that come as a physiological consequence of caffeine consumption. And when we think about children, the American Academy of Pediatrics actually recommends that children under the age of 12 avoid caffeine altogether, whereas those between the ages of 12 and 18 limit it to 100 milligram limitation. And for context, 100 milligrams is approximately 1 cup of medium roast of coffee. Now, that being said, there are clear and apparent market strategies that are targeting towards adolescents. I don't think that these bright colors that you see here are any, there's no confusing things about it, considering how much they're appealing. They're very bright, very vibrant. Red Bull even owns 2 soccer teams, one in the United States and in Germany. They dominate in the F1 market as well, too. So to say that this is not something that's targeted towards kids, it's a little sketchy in and of itself. But that being said, what are the current regulations about it? Well, let me present you 3 options right now. Number one, let's talk about the FDA. The FDA has this large 70 to 80 page document called a highly concentrated caffeine and dietary supplements guidance for the industries. Not a single mention of energy drinks and not a single mention about how adolescents relate to that. CDC has the definitions and the physiological impacts I described earlier, and American Academy of Pediatrics just shows the limitations. But despite the concerns that we have with energy drinks, I think the industry is incredibly relaxed about these products. In fact, to date, there are still no FTC warning letters or FDA recalls having to do anything with energy drinks. So, my research objective, to understand how energy drinks are marketed and regulated to adolescents and the effect of these policies on consumption and perception of the product. Here I'm going to be showcasing 2 sets of information. Number one, a couple of data and information from clinical trials to show you how much is being studied right now, as well as some emergency department reports. And then we're going to go into an IRB-approved survey that I developed back in last year that was distributed to university students at USC. First, let's talk about emergency department visits. So the Dawn report actually lists a lot of emergency department visits, and specifically they have it for energy drinks. From 2007 to 2011, they doubled from 10,000 to almost 21,000, primarily male individuals, and 58% of all the energy drink cases were exclusive to energy drinks. And we talk about exclusivity because a lot of times energy drinks can be mashed up with alcohol, other drug uses as well too. So there is great concern in that field. 1 year later, the Dawn report actually shows 1/10 of these energy drink related visits actually resulted in hospitalization. And of those hospitalization cases, 68% were exclusive to energy drinks. Now, you're wondering, well, this data is a decade old. And that came maybe with a complication of me struggling to find new Dawn reports or their 2021 report being inaccessible to me. But I can only imagine that this number is constantly increasing across a decade since then. And when we look at how many studies have been done since 2000, when I screened for this up till 2022, we actually only have 112 research studies that ever looked into energy drinks, really peaking around 2015. But what's kind of interesting and fascinating is when you look at the clinical trials that are being conducted in relation to energy drinks, look at the conditions you see above here. Obesity is definitely one of them that I listed earlier, but HIV, cystic fibrosis, we're not talking about the cardiovascular, we're not talking about the neurological implications that come with caffeine that is such a great concern. So it's kind of interesting to see that these are the factors that are really being studied over what's really the main targets of caffeine. Next, kind of going more into the survey demographics I administered. So this was collected between January 17 to April 18 of 2023, the spring 2023 semester for USC students. We have 58 participants, majority of them being female, and I would like to stress the importance that a lot of these are actually freshmen and sophomore, typically the individuals that are coming out of high school rather than the juniors and seniors that were taking this survey. But let's go into some of the data points. First and foremost, on the left chart, we see how many days in a week do you typically consume caffeine. So we can see a lot of kids are taking it pretty frequently throughout the week. And when we ask how many times a day students are typically consuming caffeine, majority of them are still going within 1 to 2 in that area. But what's kind of funny is that students are aware that caffeine is a drug. That middle bar right there indicates that more than half of the individuals do recognize that caffeine is actually a stimulant drug. When we go into the types of drinks that are consumed in terms of the caffeine products, we can see that coffee and tea still take place as the most popular, and that's actually consistent with the literature. But energy drinks is not too far off. Fourth place there, slightly under 30 individuals actually consuming energy drinks as well. Energy drink brands listed here, Red Bull being the most popular, also very consistent with market data as it is the most sold energy drink right now in the United States. But at USC specifically, I think it's interesting that Celsius ranks as number 2, knowing that Monster is actually the second most in the United States. I'd like to note that this was collected before Prime actually came out, so this didn't include that energy drink that many of you guys probably are familiar with. The two graphs here, very similar demographics, but the main point here is we ask, what are the reasons you consume caffeine on the left, and what are the specific reasons you consume caffeine on the right? But the top 3 reasons are still the same: for staying awake and alert, for taste, and for academic performance. So we can see that students are pretty much taking the product for the same reason, irregardless of what it is. When we talk about if energy drinks are categorized as a food or a dietary supplement, a lot of people have it correct as food and beverage, but there are some individuals that aren't sure particularly, and they think it's actually both. On the flip note, when we ask students, do you think energy drinks should be strictly regulated, this is where things get a little bit hazy. A lot of students say yes, and a good portion of them also say that they're not sure. And keep in mind, the students that are consuming energy drinks are also listing that as well, too. And finally, how much caffeine do you think is safe to consume in a day? So a lot of people are saying 2 cups of coffee, which is about 200 milligrams. For context, toxicity levels is approximately 500 to 600. So I can only hope that the 3 people at the very right are doing okay. So discussion-wise, again, commercialization and regulation, it's very loosely regulated right now. I think there definitely needs to be more ways to address this specific concern. And people do consume caffeine pretty frequently, but there are some gaps regarding the knowledge of the product and safety levels. And for future directions, I'm hoping to find more correlations within this data set and hopefully expand it so we can really understand it. But one thing I like to show really fast is the implications of this. There are articles going out right now talking about energy drinks with caffeine or energy drinks in adolescents, and it's really going to the industry right now in the media. I think Prime has a big involvement in this, definitely something that's being targeted with Logan Paul and KSI being some of the greatest marketing forces. This was actually released just last week. They found forever chemicals in some of these products, so it's kind of great. And we look at the way that these articles are showing these kids just looking for these energy drinks. At the same time, I know I talk a lot about adolescents, but I wouldn't be too sure about it because it even seems like Grandpa Joe will fight Billy for an energy drink as well too. References, and I'd like to thank everyone so much for listening.